19 years old was 9/11. And that was really the tipping point for me. That was the catalyst for me. And I really struggled to stay in school because I knew where we were going as a nation, and I wanted to be part of that response. I stayed in school. I grinded out the rest of my degree, which was this huge challenge and a struggle. And then I began looking at options to come into the military right after that. I felt like I wanted to go directly into special operations. I wanted to get into special operations as soon as possible. I felt like my physical attributes utilized there. And I think more so than that, I wanted to make as much of a difference a single person can make. It was not intended to be a career for me or a profession or a lifestyle. This was come in, get to the front of the fight, kick some ass, get some justice, and then get out of the Army and figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. And as I started shopping different recruiters and looking at the different options, I ultimately landed on the Army Special Forces because, one, it gave me the fastest route to get directly to that unit, which is an option that still exists today. It's known as the 18 X-ray contract option, otherwise known as a Special Forces recruit, which gives guys off the street the chance to bypass serving anytime in the conventional Army. So I was enticed by that. And then I had begun doing a little bit of research on what Green Berets do, because I really didn't know. I'd seen the movies and John Wayne and Rambo, but I had no idea what Green Berets actually did. So I began doing some homework, and I was really drawn to the different mission sets that Special Forces are expected to do, particularly the more well-known and kind of our primary one being that of unconventional warfare.
I want to back up a hair. You mentioned you stuck out college for the next 2 years, but you hated it. Thank you. And how did you show up for yourself every single day doing something you didn't like to do?
Well, I mean, in college, I oftentimes didn't. I would procrastinate. I would put things off. I lived a somewhat typical college athlete lifestyle. As long as I was eligible, I was to play. I was more than fine with that. So I avoided a lot of the hard things in college, and I started making some really knucklehead-like decisions and some really horrible choices that could have very easily taken my life in an entirely different direction. Again, I think I was overcompensating for basically an entire life of insecurity and doubt and fear. And I began to develop my body physically. I really started to grow into myself, and I was this really big, strong, athletic individual. And I began wielding that in ways in which I'm not exactly proud of. So I didn't live a very disciplined lifestyle, and it really wasn't very structured. Playing ball was the only thing that kind of gave me even anything kind of positive direction to be employing myself. So I kicked a lot of things down the road. And I like this point specifically because some, will read my book or watch a video on me or hear me at a conference or something and kind of get this idea that I was always this way. Like I was groomed to be, or I always lived this very disciplined, structured, work ethic driven lifestyle, which is totally inaccurate. That really didn't come about for me until I pivoted my life into a more positive direction. I decided to enter the military, and once I graduated school, and although a lot of those foundational aspects were there, it was buried. It was buried under a lot of insecure and poor decision making. So the military is really what began extracting that from me, and then layering on additional skill within those areas on top of it.
So when you decided to fast track to Special Forces, did you train prior to all that? Like, how when you just say, I'll do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes, and then you develop the habit of just putting things off. Well, it sounds to me like you developed that in school where you put things off and you were procrastinating and you didn't have that discipline. Re-get that discipline to then have the success that you had to even make it through Special Forces?
Yeah, it's a good question because, I said that the military really began to pull that from me, and I would stand by that. If you backed up that time horizon a little bit prior, it was once I decided that I was going to enter the military and I was going to become a Green Beret. that was really what began me taking things a lot more seriously. And, I was always in the gym and I was always training my body and, doing martial arts and boxing. But like living an athletic lifestyle was just normal for me, but it really wasn't all that structured and really well thought out. And there wasn't a whole lot of intent attached to it. I was doing a lot of things physically, but without an intent, like a desired end state that's associated with the task. You can do things all day long. You're not necessarily progressing towards anything. In my opinion, you need to have a target to be. So once I made the decision, like I'm going to become a Green Beret, now I had a target and now I had an intent and I had great people around me, my strength coaches to help me kind of dial in what I was doing. So what ended up being, about 18 weeks or 20 weeks, I put myself through this like crazy training program, mostly physical, but I began reading and studying a little bit of stuff about the military and just how they operate. So I'd say it got a little more dialed in prior to me actually having an identified mission.
Today's podcast episode is brought to you by my absolute favorite company. If you know me or seen videos or photos of me, then you know I always have one on my wrist. I absolutely adore this company. DiscoverOmnia.com. DiscoverOmnia.com is the world's first smart crystal bracelet. Every single bracelet is handmade in the USA using real, genuine crystals made on memory wire. Every bracelet is unisex and they're also aromatherapy. The cool part is the black onyx charm that is on the bracelet. It scans to your cell phone, connecting you to their Wellness Hub Elevate. You can also access their Wellness Hub Elevate on your computer or tablet. You just have to sign into your account. The bracelet gives you a 12-month membership. It has over 200 pieces of self-care content from motivational tips, meditations, breathing exercises around the theme of your bracelet, printable journals, and so much more. The content is ever growing. And that's not all. The bracelet also gives you lifetime access to their Elevate Together Club, which meets monthly via Zoom. Each month is themed, giving you actionable takeaways to elevate your life. And with this podcast episode, you get 40% off your purchase order by using the code MindsetPodcast. Use that code MindsetPodcast for 40% off. Just go to DiscoverOmnia.com. DiscoverOmnia.com, code MindsetPodcast for 40% off. Get your bracelet today. So then you go in and then tell us a little bit about, because again, you are the first Green Beret on the show, how the training process works and for yourself, like your experience going in. Did you know the challenges that you were going to be facing? Were there a lot of people that were quitting around you? Like what was going on for you?
Yeah. So by the time I got into the Army, I was 24 years old. It took me almost 7 years to graduate from college. That's how horrible of a student I was. So I was a grown man with a lot of life experience. So I show up to basic training and I got like 17, 18-year-old kids around me. And in my mind, I was already like ready to go, like get me to selection as soon as possible. I had this very like egotistical, like I'm going to dominate this whatever's in front of me, no matter what, based almost entirely on my physical characteristics and capabilities. So basic training, it was 16 weeks the way that I ended up going, because they basically stack basic training and advanced individual training right on top of each other, because you come in as an infantryman is the route you take if you come in as a special forces recruit. Therefore, if you don't make it as a Green Beret, then you are an infantryman, and then you end up going down the route of an infantry soldier. So my route was Fort Benning, basic training, straight into advanced individual training. From there, small break to airborne school, which is also at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then I had a break because the holidays were up and there was a lag. And then I arrived at Fort Liberty, North Carolina, and then began the actual special forces process or aspect of the training. And for 18 X-rays, for the guys off the street, we would get a preparatory course prior to going into selection. And this was just to give us some kind of basic military or army fundamentals that most of us probably don't know, like knot tying, land navigation, things that most soldiers would have at least an idea of how to do because they lived their lives as soldiers before going to selection. So they give us kind of a prep course in that. And really it's a lot of physical stuff. They're just basically beating the hell out of you physically and then teaching you classes in between. My journey was a little weird that like that condensed that course, which was supposed to be 5 weeks long or 6 weeks long, for me was only 5 days long. And then I ended up in selection much sooner than I anticipated, which was totally cool with me. I was ready to go, go to selection, which at the time I went was just 2 weeks long. Now it's closer to 3. I think it's 20 days, 21 days. You get selected. And then you begin the Special Forces qualification course, which for me took a little over a year, which is still right around average, depending on the actual job that you get, because there are certain specialties that you are taught when you're in the Q course. So for me, from the moment I got to basic training, it took about 2.5 years or so of training with these little kind of gaps in between before I ended up donning my Green Beret for the first time and then showing up to my unit.
Within those 2 years, were there a lot of people that were dropping out around you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the attrition rate then was higher than it is now, but it's still high. Like my selection class had about 300 candidates that showed up on day one. And I want to say around 100 made it to the end. So about 2/3 quit or get injured during that 2 weeks. So you're left with about a third, about 100 candidates are left. And out of those 100, they selected about 60 or so, maybe 65, give or take. So out of the 300 that showed up on day one, around 60 or so were actually selected. And then, that's one filter you make it through. And then you end up in, phase one of the qualification course, which at the time that I went through was still very much also kind of an assessment as well. Now it's a little different. Now they look at the Q course more as a school, as a training environment where the cadre and the instructors are there to teach you tasks. While that was also true when I went through, they were also still very much assessing you. So the attrition rate in the Q course portion, with 12 to 20 or so months, depending on the specifics, there were a lot more people, a lot more guys that were getting dropped from the course for not meeting certain standards. So just as you move from phase one to phase two to phase three, you're losing guys on the way as well. And then, you get to the end and whoever's left is who's at graduation with you.
Did you have any struggles or challenges along the way till graduation?
Oh yeah. Constant challenges. That's like kind of the whole point is, different types of challenges during different phases, so you're learning tactics, you're learning strategy, you're learning different techniques, but you're also learning, foreign language, and you're learning some, cultural dynamics through the course. You're learning like leadership principles. It's not all how many pull-ups can you do, how fast can you run, and how efficient can you clear a room with your CQB, abilities. There's a lot that's being thrown at you. I severely underestimated how difficult leadership attributes were going to be for me. Team dynamic was going to be for me. And then foreign language absolutely kicked my ass. So one of the differentiators between Green Berets and most of the other special operations units is we have to be proficient in a foreign language. That's a requirement. So you spend anywhere from 4 to 6 months in the Q course just learning a foreign language in a classroom. Like that's it. And I struggled with that. I mean, that was really difficult for me. So there were a lot of different points that were challenging. Most of it, was challenging, some easier than others for different people. But yeah, it's 2.5 or so years of consistent adversity and challenges.
So let's talk about what you just talked about with how the foreign language just be up. And and there was, like you said, in the last 2.5 years, there's a lot of challenges and it's constant adversity the whole entire time. So how do you, I want to keep saying show up for yourself, but I mean, essentially, it's you have to do the work. Like my coach would always say, like, I could give you all the tools, but I can't drag you through the finish line. You have to take yourself. How do you take through cities and those challenges and get to the end? And I understand, like, it's well, I had a goal and I was just shooting at that goal. What else can you say about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head because for me, and I speak, I think for a lot, it begins and oftentimes ends with a clear vision of the desired end state, a clear, a high degree of clarity of the mission. Because, like, why are you putting yourself through this? And this is what I just had a conversation with some random TSA agent in the airport the other day as I was going through traveling, who's like, hey, I know who you are and I want to be a Green Beret. We had a quick conversation. And I'm like, listen, know your why. And in my opinion, there's no wrong answer. Now, I may be unique with that opinion. Some feel that you need to have the right reason. I would argue that as long as your reason is grounded in truth and self-awareness, then that's going to be the thing that gets you through those really hard times. When you're asking yourself, why take another step? Why try to do another rep? Why try to go do this task that I just completely failed? Again, that's going to be the answer to the question. And if you're lying to yourself about the reason why you're there, odds are it's not going to be strong enough to get you through it. So whether it's rooted in patriotism or desire to serve and defend your country, or you just want to see, I just want to do it. Kind of the David Goggins-like approach, who really just wanted to see if he could become a Navy SEAL, like push himself to the absolute extreme and see if you can make it. Whatever the reason is, know it, have a firm grasp of it, because that's what's going to pull you out of those dark moments, which are inevitable. They're going to be coming in droves. So, you weaponize your why. And then I guess maybe more kind of the tactical level when you're like in the moment. I just kind of started to develop these little phrases that I would say to myself. And this is pretty common, certainly in the special operations communities, but it exists outside that. There's these little phrases that you can quickly tell yourself, scream it out loud if you need to. It's in moments like this that determine how bad you want it and if you're going to make it. And we all want stuff. And it's just those that are willing to push through the hard things to turn that want into something real. That I still use today. It's on a whiteboard right now in my closet. This is the cost of admission. And I would just say that to myself and saying, you asked to be here. You're the one that decided you want to be a Green Beret. You want to serve at the tip of the spear. You want to get payback for 9/11. This is the cost of admission. So you want it, which is fine, but are you going to make it real? And if the answer to that is yes, then this is your opportunity to make that real. So you almost begin to just reframe what adversity is. And yes, it's going to be hard and there's risk involved and there's likely discomfort and fear and all that, but it's also an opportunity. And when you're seeing those around you that are off ramping literally in real time, they're feeling the same, they're doing the same thing, feeling likely the same degree of suffering, and they're ringing the bell. It's like, all right, like that's what the alternative is. You either keep going or you ring the bell. Like, how bad do you want it? Because if you're being honest with yourself and you're saying, I want this more than anything right now, now's your chance to actually demonstrate that.
Yeah, in the very first episode we had, my coach said nobody rides this train for free, and I mean I feel like that's the same thing in life. Life is meant to be experienced, and if you want to experience life, you got to put yourself through it, and fight your way through what life gives you. When you a Green Beret, you had before your 2013 accident, you had 2 other accidents prior to that. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah. I mean, I was wounded in combat twice prior to the incident that would cost my leg. Both of those injuries were in the same deployment. So all 3 of those happened on the same deployment. We went in to Afghanistan in September of 2000 for a 6-month deployment. And it was during the duration of those 6 months that I was wounded 3 times total.
So I want to get into this part of the show on your injury. And I want to talk about, first of all, prior to this, when you had your first injury, we're going to go to the very first one. Is it kind of like, this is just what's to be expected? I mean, you know, you don't go to a knife fight and not expect to get cut. You know, you expect that you may get scraped up a bit, or worse, die. So for you, like, how do you come through that, like, and go the next round and then go the next round and just keep on wanting to keep going? Was there ever a fear of death or a fear of, like, you know, you have a wife, you have kids. I don't know if you had that back then, but like, was there ever a moment, or you had parents, you know, where you just kind of like, this is a lot?
Short answer is yeah. I mean, absolutely. On most days, you know, the expression courage does not exist without fear. And, you know, there is this, I'd say, general perception that, particularly with special operations personnel, that we are fearless or emotionless. And, like, whether it's through training or however someone thinks that we literally pump the emotions out of our body and they no longer exist anymore, is completely and totally inaccurate. We are creatures of emotion, regardless of what you do for a living. So what makes special operations personnel unique is not removing the emotion, it's emotional regulation. It's the ability to know what the emotion is you're experiencing and gain control of it, and then still be able to make objective, logical decisions. That's it. And that is developed over training. And it's just an important nuance. So the term fearless, if you looked at that literally, is completely and totally inaccurate. So yeah, most days, fear is part of the lifestyle you live when you're within those types of environments. When I was injured for the first time, I was the first one on my team to be somewhat seriously injured. I took some grenade shrapnel to the back of my shoulder, blew about a lemon-sized hole in me. You know, to your point, almost anticipation that this could happen because this is your chosen profession and you're willingly going into known gunfights. And that's what we asked for. And that's what we want to be doing. So yeah, okay, I may get banged up today. I may lose my life today. Roger that. This is what I'm here to do. So full send anyway. What I like to point out about this injury, because this was the first of us to be wounded in kind of serious capacity, certainly not the last on this deployment, was at that point, we were around for a few weeks, but we had been operating aggressive, and there is a razor thin line between confidence and cocky. And in my opinion, we had kind of spilled over that a little bit. You know, we almost had this idea that we were invincible. You know, we got the upper hand, we got the training, we got the skills, we got the weaponry. Like, we have all of this to our advantage. Like, we can't be touched. You know, we can't be touched. We're invincible. We are going to go in and annihilate 100 times out of 100. Nothing's ever going to happen to us. And then boom, you know, literally boom. Okay, one of us is like taking some type of damage. It was an eye-opening event for all of us, particularly for my leadership on my detachment at that time. It was like, damn, yeah, we are good, really good, and we got all this stuff, and we got the Velcro and the Copenhagen and the optics and like all the cool guy stuff. But like, we are human beings, and these are some resilient fighters that are not just gonna, you know, drop their stuff and run when we show up. Like, they're gonna dig in. And so it was an awakening moment for us all that really did start to adjust some of the decisions that were being made tactically. But yeah, you know, it's a shock. Oh my gosh, that this is totally happening. Adrenaline's through the roof. But, you know, training kicks in, you plug it up, you put a pressure dressing on it, you realize that, wow, this stuff actually works, you know, because you do all this kind of training before you go get into the game. And now you're playing the game based on the way that you've trained, but it's different. I mean, but you see why we train the way we do when it's happening for real. And you're going through these different courses of action options to address problems. And then those problems actually start to be solved. And you're like, wow, this stuff actually kind of works, you know? So it was more of an awakening for us all that, yeah, we're really good and we're going to continue to kick ass, but we need to be watching that line between confidence and cocky.
How do you train your emotions to control them?
Deliberate, strategic exposure to discomfort, I guess, would probably be the more concise way I can summarize it. I think it's easier to look at doing that physically. You get on the assault bike, which is like a torture machine, and you're like, I'm going to do this like sprint workout, and you're into it, and in the first 30 seconds, 60 seconds, you're like, oh yeah, I feel great, and you're like, I feel like I'm going to die, and like everything in your body is telling you to stop or to slow down or get off this thing, and the pain starts to set in, your lungs are burning, maybe you're losing peripheral vision, so I think it's more obvious when you're training that way physically and you're at that crossroads and you say, what am I going to do? Am I going to peel off? Am I going to off ramp? Am I going to start going at 50% instead of 100? Am I just going to flat out quit? Going. And particularly when you're doing that physically in isolation, like the cliche early morning, late night, grind sessions when no one else is around, no one's paying attention to you, your family, teammates, your bosses, your haters, like no one knows what you're doing, and you could easily scale it back to 50% or flat out stop, and no one's going to know the difference other than you. So it's in those moments where it's just you and your character, and you decide to continue to push anyway. Those wins compound over time. And I would argue that while the result of the task itself provides value, that the execution in the face of discomfort provides greater value. It's the fact that you still did it when everything said not to, because not only does that compound over time, but you see that oftentimes our brains will tell us something for the sake of our survival, but they're playing, our brain's playing it safe. Like we have more to put out. We just have to be willing to do it. It gets a little bit more difficult, I would argue, when you're talking about training your emotions, you're training your mentality, although there's a direct correlation. Your physical health and mental well-being are directly correlated. So I use the example of, if you're in any sort of serious relationship, I'm married, we got two small boys. It's like, that there's a conversation that needs to be had, and there's going to be as to why you may want to avoid it, or it's not the right time, or let me just see how it plays out, or just to like push that difficult conversation down the road for the sake of saving our emotional wellness. But you do it anyway. And, you lean into that discomfort. Like, this is going to be uncomfortable and this is going to be hard. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to put together a little game plan and I'm going to execute on that. And then just like on the assault bike, when you do that, you see a couple things. One, wow, I really, I did that. Everything inside of me was telling me that I couldn't do it, or it wasn't the right time, or whatever the reason or excuse may have been, but I did it anyway. And you know what? It's doable. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And that's the compounding effect. So these opportunities are around us. I mean, just constantly throughout every single day. We just have to, I think, begin seeing them as opportunities to win over time when done with consistency, and then fight that urge to off ramp, fight that biological urge to off ramp with the reasonings, aka excuses, and lean in and prove to yourself that you can do it. And the more you do it, like anything else, it gets slightly easier over time, and it gets slightly more automated over time, where this just becomes the way you operate.
After your first injury, you went back, and then your second injury. In between the first and the second one, what kind of fear was there? Fear or anything going on when you go back into combat after that first injury?
I'd say no more than what was already there for me. In fact, it may have made my ability to employ courage in the face of fear a little easier, because I took a pretty decent shot, something that could have killed me. Obviously I got lucky, a couple more inches in the other direction and, I'm probably done. It probably boosted my confidence just that much more. It doesn't mean that the fear goes away, but it means that I'm now equipped with just that much, another data point that demonstrates that I can do this. And I've got great people around me that are highly trained, and I'm highly trained, mostly as a result of them teaching me how to do things. So let's go. Because if something like this happens, which it would, we can handle it.
I actually want to back up a little bit and ask you a question from earlier, where you mentioned when you were a kid, there was a lot of insecurities and you were a chameleon and you were just working on fitting in. And At what point did those insecurities go away and you became the person that you are and want to be?
I'm not sure if they've ever gone away entirely. Because there are times now still today that I experience insecurity. And I think that's totally expected and part of us as humans. Many aren't going to want to share that, out of a fear of being judged, or, I want to be seen as this like hyper type A fearless animal all the time. Okay, cool. I would argue that that's probably not the case. I'm more than comfortable saying like, yeah, I experience that still now. And I think that that's the result of self and to learn new things, reach outside that comfort zone and live outside that comfort zone. Because if you're going to be continuously striving into the unknown, I don't know, like how is this going to play out? Insecurity doesn't necessarily mean stagnation. You can feel the insecurity. Like, I don't know how this is going to end, but you know what I do know is that I have made doing hard things habitual, and that's evidence-based. That's purely objective. I can not know how it's going to play out. You can do hard things. And that, I think, is a powerful tool. So to answer your question maybe more acutely, I'd say, once I got to the teams and I began living my lifestyle as a Green Beret, once I got here and started doing this is all I wanted to do. This was it. I mean, I was fully invested. I didn't have the family that I have today, wife, kids. It was like this operator that, because I was living off of it. I was thriving off of it. It was no longer a job for me. It was a lifestyle. So, you do that and you got that vision real clear, and you're going back into the game, in 6 or so months. So it's like there's no time to mess around, because it's about to be game time again. Through repetition, confidence is built. And in my opinion, confidence is evidence-based. Now, you can scream affirmations into the mirror to try to increase. I don't know if I'd call that false confidence, but I would certainly call it something different than confidence. I think true confidence is evidence-based, and that's earned over time through multiple hundreds of thousands of repetitions on certain tasks and crafts, so that when it comes time to go do something, you can do it because you've done it so often. And after, being base grow. So my insecurity at large, just generally speaking, kind of began to dissipate because I put the work in.
Now I'm going to fast forward and go back to where we were. Thank you for that answer. When you then got your second injury, what was going on through your mind? Now it's like, oh my God, second time. You said there was ego, was high the first time, and then we learned from that. And then, then there was another injury that came on.
Yeah, I mean, the second time I was wounded, I took an AK-47 round to the face. I don't know if you can see the scar. They did a great job cleaning me back up. There was actually a plastic surgeon that was in Afghanistan that put me back together. When this happened, 6 of my friends were in the side of another vehicle that was decimated by a roadside bomb, and they were all fighting for their lives. And I didn't even gunshot for like was late. I knew I was bleeding a lot, but it was a scratch. And that's not this machismo tough guy. It's just, it was, I looked at it that way because I'm treating my friends who are dying, and this was nothing compared to what was going on around me. So, in the moment, I didn't really think much of it at all. Once I eventually got in front of a doctor, hours later, he's like, hey, it's a gunshot wound. I'm like, okay. He's, cauterized it, stitched it back up, gave me some antibiotics, kept an eye on it for like a day or two. And then I was right back with the boys, right back to work. So it was kind of just another event within a really challenging deployment. Guys were getting blown up. Guys were losing their lives. Like, this was nothing in context. And I think that's why the context is incredibly important, because if someone was just like going to go walk down the street today to go to the grocery store, and they take a rifle round to the face, that's gonna suit the rest of the week and month and potentially the rest of their life. Yeah. So the context is important. We're in Afghanistan. We've been there several months. We're in gunfights on most days. All the teams that within our area are all getting after it the same way. this is just the environment that I've chosen to immerse myself in. So it really didn't mess with me all that much. If anything, it maybe just reinforced my confidence just that much more, just kind of like after I was wounded the first time.
We'll go into the third time. Can you talk a little bit about when your big injury happened?
Yeah, we only had a couple weeks left before we were heading home. This was March now of 2013, and getting ready to go on an operation. We had a whole bunch of different partner force guys that were going out with that day. And the short version of the Police Force Ranger pickup truck that had a mounted PKM belt-fed machine gun and just opened fire into me and my friends from about 30 feet away, which was the initiation of a complex ambush. So there were about 30 enemy fighters that had our camp almost entirely surrounded that all began raining in machine gun and rockets and whatnot on top of us. So most of the damage to me was to my right leg. I took anywhere from 5 or 6 rounds to my right, just decimated it. It just chewed it to shreds. Severed my femoral artery, shattered my femur into like 20 pieces. You know, I treated myself with a series of tourniquets and internal pressure dressing. And eventually I was able to get medevaced out. You know, once the guys that were still upright were able to get the situation under control on the ground, they could start landing birds. There were 12 U.S. casualties, 3 of which were killed. And stable enough to me, got there. And then I arrived at Walter Reed, where I would spend the next year, about 35, 40 surgeries on my right leg as they were just incrementally amputating it piece by piece as they were battling infection. Eventually got that under control, and then kind of began my recovery process, learning how to live life as a one-legged guy, learning how to operate a prosthetic. And after a year, returned back to my unit, and I was offered a full medical military retirement, which I wanted nothing to do. Army really did their best to force me into medical retirement. So I had to dig in, and I found myself in an administrative brawl with the Army that I eventually won. Took about 8 months. During that time, I've been working as an instructor, and it was then that I made it known to my leadership that I wanted to get back onto the team. And, you know, it hadn't, and like with anything that's never happened before, it's met with a lot of concerns and questions and a whole shitload of doubt. But God bless them, because they did give me the opportunity to demonstrate my capacity to operate in that type of environment. And they ran me through the ringer. It took about 12 weeks of different assessments and tests, which at the conclusion of that, I was given the green light to go back to my team. I went back to the same one I was on when I was wounded. And about 7 or so weeks later, we were back in Afghanistan.
About the time in the hospital, surgeries. In your mind, you've always wanted to get back to the teams. Is that correct? Like that was your goal the whole entire time?
Correct.
I know nothing about what you're going through or what you went through at all. I lost my hearing when I was 21. I went completely deaf. It suddenly happened. One moment I was eating dinner, suddenly gone. And I'm at the mercy of the doctors that are giving me steroids and helping me to figure out, like, A, what happened, and B, like, telling me it'll never come back and all this other stuff. It's like, how do you, and I had to keep fighting to be like, no, there got to be another way. Like, I have to be able to get my hearing back, like, you know, and working towards you as at the mercy of these doctors who you're going through all these surgeries, and piece by piece, your leg is just, you're losing bits and pieces of your leg. How do you like keep that eye on the prize on what you wanted when you're completely out of control? Like, it's not in your control in terms of what's going on with your leg and your body. Makes sense.
Say was, and this is a philosophy that I've adopted and one that I coach. I understand that can't plays a role at some point. It's a word that I have a difficult relationship with under most circumstances, but it's also true at times. So in those moments consider disregarding what you quote unquote can't do and tripling or quadrupling down the things that you can do. And not only is that done, but if you've done strategically and tactically, you can actually increase strength, knowledge, capacity, your overall capability while you're addressing and dealing with this issue, whether that's physical or otherwise. So for me, that began with a simple leg lift of my sound leg. So my left leg did take some damage. I took a round through my lower left leg as well, which caused a little bit of problems, but it wasn't broken and I can move it. So trying it once as I'm laying there in bed, helpless, and I need someone to help me do just about everything. Feed me, bathe me. I'm laying there like a vegetable, which is really hard as a warrior and as someone who's used to being asked to solve problems and being able to do it. It's really hard to be relying on others to do basic life functions. And the frustration was building. And at some point, I got hospital bed and flexor, and my left leg came off the bed and went right back down. That was it. And it was like, oh, well, I can do that. Look, I'm sitting here saying I can't do anything on my own because most things did require some assistance. But you know what? I found something that I could do on my own. And that just became my thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do today. I'm going to do 50 of these leg lifts, boom. And then tomorrow I'm going to do 100. And then the next day I'm going to do 120. And like that became what I focused. Got it. We got an issue that is being dealt with right now. We can't ignore it, but we're at a lag point here. That's injury or other circumstance that's being addressed, but I'm unable to operate in a normal capacity with this aspect of my life, or in this case of my body. So I'm going to triple down on the things that I can do. And I think that just from a philosophical perspective, that's quite powerful. I get a chance to spend time with a lot of people that are going through injuries, whether it's a loss of a limb or a torn ACL. And it's like, oh, my whole life is crashing down around me because what I normally could do, I can't do it. And I'm like, I got it. But what can you do? Because if we triple down on those things, not only is it going to give you something to do other than lose your mind, but you can actually increase your strength and your capability during this lull. You're going to turn your lull into a positive.
It's not powerful.
My approach, in a well thought out self-help book that taught this, I just did it one day and I'm like, oh, okay, that's going to be my outlet. And then just slowly that menu of options of what you can do begins to grow over time. And then so you just begin adding more and more things that you can do, and you're continuously testing the things that you can't. Think of all of the strength and all of the additional attributes that you built over time during this kind of transition period, this little lull you were going through, because a lot of those are things that you may keep, even though you could go back to squatting normally, right? Go ahead and do that. But look at all these other exercise choices that you now have in your repository because you were forced to focus on those versus the other. So you're arsenal on what you can do. So I've used the same exact methodology for many, many other injuries since losing my leg. It's like, yep, this totally sucks. I got it. How do I use this to my advantage?
Did you ever at any point fall into the victim trap?
The short answer is not really. I want to be very clear. When I was in the hospital and even, beyond that, because minute to minute, just a whirlwind of, fear and discomfort and doubt. And then you get the surge and you're going, and then you fall, sometimes literally in my case, and I'm laying on the ground. I just smacked my face on the ground again for the third time today because I still can't figure out how to walk with this robot leg and just the frustration. So it's like this crazy roller coaster ride. But generally speaking, I really did for this victimhood mentality. I get it when that happens. And oftentimes it's understandable. As the result of a traumatic event, and that's okay. What I do know is that the solutions to those dilemmas do not exist in being a victim and then the woe is me and why did this have to happen to me, or why did the universe or God or whomever like put this on me, and it's not going to work. It may be what you want to do, just just curl up in this woe is me and just sulk, versus getting after it and getting out there and pushing yourself. So I understand it. I was able to kind of wipe that option off the table immediately. Like, that's not gonna. I know what I need to do, or at least I know what I'm going to do. And is between now and then, and sitting in the corner sulking as the victim is not going to benefit that whatsoever.
It's so easy to fall into that victimhood trap. It's so easy to just crawl up in a ball and just detach from everything. I feel like, we do it a lot in society just by like sitting on the couch and watching TV. Do you feel like all of your training helped you in this aspect to not fall into that and to do what you needed to do to keep going?
Huge aspect of that. My life in the military for sure, and then just other ways that I chose to live. Jiu-jitsu, great example. I've been doing combat sports years ago, and like, move or die. That's it. Those are your options. Move or die. And like, it's a great comparison to life in general. And like, those are your choices. What are you going to do? And so yes, the military, the things that I've just been interested in doing have been part of equipping me with skill and knowledge to address that. And then I've also just, as I've grown more interested in this topic and analyzing, why is it so easy to be a victim? And, just briefly, if we choose to recognize the reality that emotional wellness is tied directly to physical health, then this all becomes very crystal clear as to why this is so easy, as to why ownership is so difficult. Because emotional wellness, negative emotions over time can down regulate hormones and make us very directly correlated. And if we want to, our brain wants to safeguard us from that, from experiencing emotional pain, because our brain wants to keep us alive, and getting sick it goes against that. It's the justifications as to why this isn't your fault, or why this is just meant to be, or you got dealt a bad hand. Like, it's not on you. It's not your fault. It's us. This is the deck of cards I was handed, and like, that's it. And there's nothing I can do about it. This, like, it is what it is mentality is also, it's so easy for us because we're programmed to protect our mental wellness. Because if you look at the truth, that can be hard. That can be a hard pill to swallow, and it can cause damage, emotional damage, which can lead to physical unwellness or illness. So there's a very quite biological why for us. Why ownership is so difficult, because fault, in my opinion, is irrelevant. It doesn't matter whose fault it is under most circumstances. You're in a courtroom. Okay, I got it. Generally speaking, who cares whose fault it was? Because irrelevant, it is your responsibility to take your circumstances and live the best life possible. That is your responsibility. And if you're willing to discomfort to take on to our emotional wellness. So in my opinion, that's why it is incredibly easy to take that victimhood approach and to just curl up in a ball and say, it's not my fault, and this is where I'm supposed to be, and that's all I have as my options. If you're willing to accept the truth that regardless of that, it is your responsibility, and take that face, it's likely step one, and then it's just a matter of begin putting in the reps.
For just someone that's not in the military, doesn't have the training that you had, life is hard I don't care who you are, everyone has a hard life. And how can someone prepare for the challenges that are to come? You mentioned jujitsu was really civilian to really build up that resilience and that to prepare for the hard stuff that they're not ready
Yeah. For. I mean, you hit it. Life is hard, period. All stop. We just have to simply decide what hard we choose. And if you choose your hard, you get much more control over it. Because it's going to be hard no matter what. Life is either you're in a storm or you're moving to the next one. That's it. And it just keeps going around and around. If you choose your hard or your hards, now you can weaponize it. Now you can actually employ some strategy and some tactics. So the unknown, when the unknown challenge comes, which is also inevitable, no matter how much hard stuff you put yourself through on purpose, the unknown, the unanticipated challenges are still showing up. You've got a list, a litany of evidence that you can do hard things. And this may be a new hard thing, but you know you can do hard things. So looking at it from that perspective, this is just conceptual. And then down kind of at the tactical level, what do you dislike doing? Ask yourself this. What do you dislike doing that if you're willing to be honest with yourself, will provide you value? Is it reading? Okay, then do it. Is it waking up early or waking up, 10 minutes before you normally physical X? Is it cold tub therapy? Is it sauna? Is it heat or cold? Is it difficult conversations with people that you care about? Is it prioritizing spending time with your kids versus working on the project, at work? So it is on the individual, my opinion, to take a quick examination of the current lifestyle and say, where opportunities am I to deliberate and strategic discomfort, and then begin seeking them out in ways. And then doing so, the word strategic is there on purpose, because it can very easily get to a point where you're causing increased damage to your system without getting much ROI on that. But finding that line and that threshold, and then as the threshold moves, as the resilience builds, because it's a skill, then it's this constant overboard and decrease this. It's this never-ending process of chasing strategic, deliberate discomfort without getting into the realm of reckless. So whether you're talking about temperature, sweating, pushing your muscles, flexing your brain, in the social realms, at work, professionally, we're only limited in ways in which we can do this. But if you think that just by sitting around and letting life itself dictate your degree of mental toughness and resilience, it's if it happens at all, which it probably will, it's going to happen at such a snail's pace that I would argue, would be essentially irrelevant. If you are not deliberately seeking it and training and purposefully pushing yourself to get better, which is done through discomfort, iron sharpens iron. Tough to be more resilient. Most of us want to be more prepared for the next challenge. That is done through suffering and through discomfort. When done strategically and with consistency, that's how you build it up over time.
One last question for you, because I promise you an hour. Everyone likes to give their opinion, especially when that opinion isn't asked. How do you, and how did you, you had a goal in mind. You wanted, that was your goal. How did you shut out or the other doubt, the people that were giving your opinion on trying to get you to take that medical leave or telling you that you can't do it, and then I'm sure you at some point doubted yourself. I don't know. Did you doubt yourself at all? How do you shut out those voices to stick to that goal and to stop the doubt from taking over?
This is a great question. For one, did I experience doubt myself? Absolutely. 100%. Most of the time upon failure, which happened regularly, daily even. It's that quick little hey man, You think this is possible? Maybe you bit off more than you can chew, and you have that like quick dialogue with yourself. And you're like, no, 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 we're going to find out. Boom. And it's gone, and you're back on target, and you're back to executing. The reason why I love this conversation is because it's very easy for us to say, you know, ignore everyone else and focus on you, like block out the noise and do you. And while that there is absolute power in that, there's a reason why it's much easier said than done. It's because human beings are pack animals. We are social creatures by design as part of our survival. That's rooted in our DNA. And you've got some that are more apt to living as kind of that lone wolf, like the Omega personality types. But regardless, we're all built to be, because back in the day when the saber-toothed tiger would show up, if it was you and 50 of your friends, you had a much better chance of living. And we haven't gone away from that. It's important to know that, because it's quite normal to let other people's opinion of you affect you, because we are designed to be drawn towards others and create communities. Now, whether that's someone that you never met before on Instagram, or if it's your friend or your family member or doubting you, much easier done to just block that out. I want people to just truly understand that it's nothing to feel guilty about if you're letting other people influence you or their opinion is influencing you. It's done on purpose. There's a reason why that exists. So just, I think it's important to know, have an understanding of that, and then say, okay, cool, I get it. Like, here's why this is so hot. We still need to get past it at a certain point, but now I know why this is. Everybody around you is just telling you whatever they think you want to hear to put you into a good state of mind. You know, so I'm like, I'm coming out of my 9th surgery, and I'm telling people I'm going to go back to the teams and back into combat. And everyone's like, absolutely, man, you got it. You'll do it. You know, just constant positivity. And then as the process continues, and now I'm training and I'm bright, and I'll use my father as an example, who's my best friend on the planet. At a certain point, he'd be like, hey, dude, listen, I love you. I don't know if this is going to happen. And I want you to be kind of prepared for that. And this was out of love. He was concerned for me putting this unobtainable goal on such a high pedestal that when I would undoubtedly fail at reaching it, that it could spiral me down into this disaster situation. And he wanted to safeguard me from that. I was able to see that eventually and relatively quickly. At first, it was kind of, how dare you doubt me? And I would be like angry about it. But then I was able to get past it. Be like, you know what, bro? This is because you love me and I get it. And I was able to get to a place where I could look at him or anybody and say, you know what? I understand your position. I respect your position. Thank you for sharing that with me, because I think that this is possible, or at a minimum, I'm going to find out if it's possible. And in today's world, which seems like insane for many people, to be surrounded by people who have different opinions than you and actually be able to discuss them, I know is like a ludicrous concept, but there's value in that, you know? So I was able to do that. And then I relied on a single word, and that word was faith. And there's certainly a biblical kind of sense to that. And while that has grown with me as well, a definition of faith, and the one that I relied on earlier on, was a firm belief in something for which there's no proof, meaning that I don't know if this is possible. Right? Nobody does, but I believe it enough that I'm willing to find out. And my desire is strong enough, and my reasonings and my drivers are strong enough for me to continue to push to find out. Even though I'm the only one who thinks that this is possible, I can stay on target. And that's why I think that becoming comfortable in isolation, mental isolation, can be incredibly powerful. And, you know, physical isolation, right? We talked about the early mornings when no one else is around. There's certainly value there as well. But being so convicted in your beliefs that you can be surrounded by those that don't believe what you do, believe something different than what you do, and be respectful of those opinions, because you're locked in to your convictions and you're willing to do just about anything to find out if what you believe to be possible is possible.
Wow, that was me. Thank you so much for that, and thanks for being on my show. You were talking with you was absolutely incredible,
Thanks,
and
Gina.
I'm very grateful. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Gina. Love the project. Good for you. I'm excited to see it play, get out of it.
Thank you.
Ultimately, I did fail. You know what I mean? I didn't make the final roster. I didn't get to play a full year. I didn't go to a Super Bowl. All these things, people have their goals. You know, I had those goals too, sure. You got to look back and realize how far you came, no matter where you end up. The fact that you didn't quit, like that wasn't my choice. I got cut, that's fine. I didn't quit, you know, I didn't give up. I did everything I could.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Cazazza, the author of the upcoming memoir, Training with the SEAL. Today's guest, aside from Coach Mack, was the first person I wanted on the show. What he has accomplished so far in life is incredible. Anything he puts his mind to, he accomplishes. He is a former Green Beret turned professional footballer. He was the oldest rookie in NFL history of the Oregon Vets, supports retired athletes and veterans. Today, he works in the film business as a director, producer, and actor. Ladies and gentlemen, I finally got him on my show. Nate Boyer. Nate, thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course. Thanks, Gina. Appreciate you having me on.
I'm so excited. So you were the first person that came to my mind when I started this podcast. So it's a real honor to have you here. And I know I have you for a limited time, so I'm going to dive right into it. And I want to start with your child enough, not being smart enough, all that stuff. What happened that changed your mindset from I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, to the I can accomplish anything?
I think probably accomplishing some little things first. You know, I was always a big dreamer, even as a kid. I wanted to, you know, change the world, and I wanted to be a, you know, professional athlete, and I wanted to be a hero, and I wanted to be all these things. But I just was like, well, who am I? I'm nobody special. I'm nothing. So I didn't even work towards that at all. I didn't even try to do much of anything. I mean, it's not completely true, but you know, it's not like I didn't work. I got jobs and I played high school sports and I did things, but I didn't truly believe greatness was possible. After high school, you know, I worked on a fishing boat for a little while, and then moved up to Los Angeles back when I with an interest in film and TV, and took some acting classes, but still didn't really apply myself, didn't really go for it. I think we often make a lot of excuses internally, and so we don't really fully pursue things. We don't really put ourselves out there because we're like, well, if I do that and then I also fail, I won't even have an excuse as to why. But if I kind of half-ass it, then I can just make excuses. So I was save my money up and go backpacking somewhere, and I ended up doing some relief work in the Darfur. And it was that time at 23 that I knew I wanted to join the Army. I knew I wanted to be a Green Beret and I wanted to serve my country. And so I came back to the States and signed up for, you know, the 18 X-ray program and did that. And it all kind of began with that trip going over there. It seemed like an impossible trip, war-torn Chad and Western Sudan, a war-torn region of those countries anyway, called the Darfur, and volunteering at the refugee camps after I was told, you know, you don't have a college degree, you don't have any special skills, like you're not going to be able to do anything. And then I still just went anyway. And once I got there, I was able to help. I was able to volunteer for a couple of months. And like, I think that was a big switch for me. Not only was I doubting this was telling me you can't do that. That's not the way it goes. It's not the way it works. But then I just bought a plane ticket and talked my way into it over there. And it really wasn't that hard. It was dangerous and crazy and kind of stupid, but the actual doing of it was not that complicated. I was overcomplicating it in my head, and I think other people were too. And just the small victory, I think. I talked a second ago about those little things first before you can accomplish the big things. And it was like, okay, well, if I can do this, I can do the next thing. And, that carried over into the Army, and it was like, just get through basic training and then airborne school. And if I can just get through that, and if I can just not quit today, I'll quit tomorrow. And then, you kind of, all of a sudden you're in special forces selection, and then you're finishing it, and all these, that same person who's like, I don't deserve this, or I'm not good enough, but I'm here doing it. I'm an imposter or whatever, but you're still like in it. And so I think that's the biggest thing. It didn't really switch for me until early 20s. So my whole childhood, I didn't feel this way, but now I'm just like, or if I'm interested in how crazy it is, I'm just going to check it out and try it and learn about it a little bit. And then if I'm interested, I'll go dip my toes in it. And then if I like it, I'll just go for it as big as I can possibly do it. And we'll see where I land.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. I want to talk about when you went through the pipeline. Your class, I believe, was 140 when you started, and then it was like 11 finished. Is that accurate?
Well, that were like me. So there were people from the conventional Army or the regular Army or whatever you want to call it, who had already been in. Most of them had deployed. There were a lot of them in combat arms units, Rangers and infantry and airborne and all this stuff. They went out to selection, and they had a much higher completion rate. Well, I don't know if that's totally true, because the way that what I'm talking about when I say there's 145 of us in my basic training class, and 11 of us, and exact numbers, but from the people I remember and the people I'm counting that got through, I think it's about that. When we started basic training, we had this 18 X-ray contract where you could come in off the street and you didn't have to have a background in the military. Obviously, we were just enlisting for the first time, but you had to take some tests, and you had to pass, obviously, ASVAB with a certain score, and then a like eval, JAP, to the other things, exam, and just to make sure that you were sound body and mind and healthy and relatively smart. You didn't have to be brilliant, but you just had to be not dumb. That's not true. I mean, you have to be, it's more than not dumb. Like you had to test like reasonably well. So then you get this contract that says, okay, after basic training, you go to airborne school. When you complete airborne school, you'll go to a preparatory weeks long selection, and then you start the Q course. So that number, those 145, there was that many people in my basic training class that had in my basic training company, because there's 200 or so in a basic training company, 50 in 4 separate platoons, and then you're broken down into squads and all kinds of stuff. So I think pretty much everybody, all but a few of the people in my platoon had this, and that was the 2 of the other. Almost everybody went through that. There was a couple people that somehow got out of the Army. I'm not sure how that all works, but some sort of an injury, or they were claiming something. I don't know. And so they got out. And then there was people in airborne school that, didn't want to jump out of planes, turns out. They were like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. So I'm good with where I'm at. Just Army, send me wherever you want me. But most people went through airborne. And then we went to soft there because it was very hard. Basic was difficult. Don't get me wrong. Jumping out of airplanes is something you've got to get over, like a fear. And then even airborne school, like, you've got to make some runs and there's certain things, standards you have to meet. Once you got into the SF training, that's where it was really challenging. And it was like, we've got these big rucksacks on, we're land navigating through the woods, by ourselves. They're putting us through some really punishing, and they called it the gig pit, where we would, jump in this cesspool of water and just get smoked. And, they're just trying to get people to quit. They're trying to see who's going to quit, not get people to quit. They're just going to see who's going to quit when things get hard, which is valid, because you don't want people out there, in your ranks in the special forces that aren't going to suck it up when things are tough. A lot of people quit, didn't make the standards. We go off to special forces selection, and that's also very challenging. And then you're connecting with the regular Army guys, the active duty enlisted folks and officers who already had served, right? And so once we all got to selection, I actually might argue that the 18 X-rays, which was the group I was a part of, had just as good of a shot, if not in some ways, the ones who had gotten through basic airborne and SOPSI, and now to this special, we've been just in some difficult training for the last 21 weeks or whatever. So basically 5 months of just, you know, getting yelled at and run through the ringer. And not that those people that were joining us hadn't been to basic and airborne school. Of course they had, but it'd been a while ago. Some of them hadn't gone to airborne school, but it'd been a while ago. And so it's a little different when you're in your unit. It's not the same amount of like just push and go and people barking at you and following orders and having to kind of just shut your mouth and do it. We were more prepared, I think, in some ways, even though we had less experience in the military. So then, you know, then you got to get through that. And then you've got a year and a half after that of training that you still could wash out of any phase. There's 5 phases as you go through. And then you finally graduate and finish. So from the very beginning of basic training to the end, on my count, it was about 145 of us that started with that contract and only about 11 of us that earned the Green Beret, and the rest went other places. But I would say if you got through SOPC, which was, you know, a pretty good number, you had a much higher chance of earning your Green Beret. You maybe it jumped up to 20, 30, 40, 50% or something like that. Could you get to that's a lesson for a lot of things, you know, when things are tough. I said it earlier, and someone's been saying this to me a lot lately. And they did that because I'm doing some ultra running now, and they're just like, you know, don't quit now, quit at the next aid station, quit in a mile, see how you feel. And then after a mile, you totally forgot that you wanted to quit. You're like, don't even feel that way anymore. You know what I mean? It's just you just don't do it. Just keep going. Your body's gonna, it's incredible what the body's capable of, but it's led by the mind.
Did you going? Like, you know, it's really hard as a lot of Green Berets I mentioned on the show. Like, the key is to have more good days than bad days, but it is challenging to be good every single day, right? And you have to perform and put out. And, you know, it's not overnight, you know, to be a Green Beret and to get to that goal. So what motivated you to keep on going? And did you have like a really bad day? How did you?
Everybody has bad days. Like, it just, you know, they say shake it off or whatever when you're playing sports or whatever it is in life. Just shake it off. It's going to be okay. But you just make mistakes. You know, I had a couple times where I just did something stupid. Usually it was something very dumb. Middle of the night during selection one time. So back then, it was before I had LASIK eye surgery. So my vision was not great. So, and they don't let you wear contacts when you're in training. Glasses and goofy looking, but they make some almost like flight looking glasses that are like rubber, and they're better for, you know, when you're out in the woods and you're sweating like crazy and all that. So they woke us up, or they had us line up in formation late at night one night. It was 10, 11 p.m. And we've been out there for a week or so already. And we've got these big two quart canteens that we're drinking water out of, trying to run or ruck march or something. And so we're all trying to hydrate. And then all of a sudden, you know, things change fast around there. They change their mind. They mess with you. Also, they come out, they're like, all right, this event has been canceled. You know, go back to your bunks. We'll notify you when the next thing is happening or whatever. So we all go back to the bunks, you know, go to sleep. And then I wake up a couple hours later, just having to pee so bad. Like, I couldn't. It was just, oh my gosh, I can't find my headlamp. I can't find my glasses. I can't see anything. Like I said, my vision was sucked. Can't see anything. I like come out of the backside of the hooch, and I can't figure out which way the bathrooms are. And I'm like about to burst. And you're, you know, obviously we're out there, we're on base, but we're in these tents. You're supposed to, like, you got to go to the bathroom in the bathrooms. You know, you can't, they say it before you go in there too. Like, don't you dare come out of the tents and just piss on the rocks, you know, over here. Gross. But I couldn't help it. So I like tucked behind a building and just went. and not realizing there was a cadre member like right near me that I just couldn't see and just watching me. And he just walks up to me and he's like, "Candidate, what is your roster number?" And I was like, 32, you know. And he wakes up the entire class, gets them all in formation, stands me in front of them. This condition of a shit bag and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, I wish I could just explain myself. I promise I'm not, but you're right. I did the wrong thing. Like I did. I screwed up. There was nothing I could say. I just had to stand there and take it. And like the next day they did peer evaluation. So of course I got a bunch of negative peer reports because people were just like, well, that guy sucks. Cause and so like I kind of knew at that point, like I need to perform 2 weeks for the rest of selection or I'm going to get cut because they evaluate everything. They're looking at all this data. So I did everything I could. I went as hard as I could on all the ruck marches and the runs and the land nav. And I was finishing like first or second in pretty much everything. So I knew I had that going for me. But you know, they brought me in their office and they're like, "Hey, just being a PT stud doesn't get you out of all this. You know, it doesn't mean that's not everything." I'm like, "I completely understand. You don't understand how much I would in a situation." I was like, "This is what happened." You know, and I was wrong. You're right. But this is why this occurred. So it was either piss myself, piss in the barracks, you know, which is not an answer, or this was the best solution that I could come up with because I couldn't see anything. I didn't know where my bearings were all messed up. I was tired. I don't know if they forgave me, but I made it through, you know, selection and on to the next. On to the next things happened, as scary as they are, because they definitely do teach you something. But I had a few moments like that in different ways where it was like, it's just something stupid, just a stupid Nate thing, just being, you know, thinking they can get away with whatever and always getting caught.
I don't know about you, but like for myself, it would bother me where like it's like eating at me. Like, oh my, there was nothing I could do. I can't explain now, you know, but I have to perform. And
Yeah.
how do you like, was it something that was constantly like replaying in the back of your mind? Did you beat yourself up or were you like, you know what, I just got to do what I have to do. And if I get cut, I get cut.
Well, I beat myself up, but I beat myself up on the trail, you know,
Okay.
which meant I just was like, I pushed myself even harder. It was just motivation to like this. Now you have no use. You have no reason. You have the best. And I think that they noticed that too. They noticed that effort. And I'm sure they were like, "Oh, that's the rock pisser guy." But at least he's like, you know, he didn't shut it down and quit. He's like going balls to the wall because he knows he's up against it right now. He's on the ropes. Yeah, I mean, that was it. That was like, that's the way you react. It's the way you have to react. It doesn't mean you're just going to be like, "Oh, for like," no, it's hard to do that. It's hard to forget about that. But you can't really control it coming back into your brain, but you can control what you're doing. You can control the actions, then the reactions and all that stuff. You can control that. You just got to do it. You know, you just have to do it. There's no other way to explain it. You just like, all right, this is occurred. It's not going away. You can't change it. It happened. It's dumb, yeah, but it also matters because details matter. You know, all those lessons, all these little things that reasons they have you do stuff in the military is for something bigger, you know, when lives are at stake, so that you don't get complacent and lazy, and you've got a plan. You've got you know, you better believe the rest of the time there, I like pinned my headlamp to the bunk above me in the springs and my glasses right next to it. So if I woke up in the night, I knew exactly where they were. And it's like, it's a huge lesson, you know, anything. I didn't have to do that before the military. I didn't think about those things. But now it's like you got to be ready to go and have your shit together and know where everything is and be organized. So it's like I got to be grateful for this stupid thing, you know, because it was embarrassing and it almost cost me a Green Beret, honestly. But because it happened, it taught me a huge lesson. And I'm grateful for the cadre that didn't cut me, you know, that
Yeah.
they gave me a lot of shit. They definitely didn't let it go. I wouldn't have either if I was cadre. I would have kept bringing it up, man, and just been like, "Oh, you're that guy. Okay." You know? But yeah.
So I want to segue to then you got your Green Beret, 5 years in, you were wondering like, what are you gonna do after this, right?
Mhm.
Now, what made you like at 20, you were like you deserves, right? So
An
why
active, so I transitioned to the National Guard from
you
active.
transitioned to the National Guard? You decided I'm gonna should go for a football. I'm gonna go for football, right? And it's just
Yeah.
like you've never played organized football before. You got a lot stacked against you in terms of what people say about you, short, not fast, all that stuff. Then you decide, you know what, I'm gonna give this a shot. I like playing, I want to go. What all of a sudden had you have like go from like I have zero. It was like being a Green Beret. Like it's like I have zero. I just did this. I did that other thing. I'm doing these little things, and then it's like I have zero doubts that I'm not making it right now. Like I know I'm going to go in. And then did you go for the long snapper because that was the opening that was there, or you would have chose any position if there was an opening? Like what made you go for that?
Well, I actually walked on as a safety. I honestly didn't even know what a long snapper was when I started playing because I'd never played before. It's like I understood there was somebody that ball to the punter and the holder during field goals and extra points, the center, and he just snapped it longer. I didn't realize it was when I went out for the team. Like you said, I was not fast. I was not big. I was old, but I was in good condition in the military. I had a lot of endurance, and I went hard on every play, and that was valuable to the team as far as, well, this guy will be a practice squad scout teamer who can prepare our players for the game because he's going to go hard in practice. And yeah, maybe he'll never actually play, especially safety, which is a defensive back for people that don't know. But at least he's going to go hard. And so I did that whole first year. I just was on the scout team. I got to dress for home games and I got to run down on kickoff one game when we were blowing somebody out. But I wasn't like a real player. I don't know. That's not fair. I just wasn't a starter. And I wanted to be. I wanted to play. I wanted to play meaningful snaps. There was an expectation because I was 10 years older than the other freshmen and I'd been to war and done these different things that I should be a leader and vocal in the locker room. I didn't feel as comfortable doing that if I wasn't playing, for me to be. So I wanted to, find a way. I needed to find a way on the field. And long snapping is a very thankless job. We do a lot of thankless jobs in the military, so I was used to that. It's also like a specific skill where it's like shooting free throws in basketball. It's the same every time. It's always a 15-yard snap to the punter or an 8-yard snap to the holder for field goals and extra points. It's the same distance, it's the same target, it's the same no matter where you are on the field. The difference is the situation, the beginning of the game, where it's not a close game or it's not an intense moment. You're not going to feel the same nervousness that you do when you're you're backed up at your own goal line and there's a minute left and the punter's got to get a good punt off so they're not in field goal range, you know. Yeah, which is helpful to remember. It's just the same, but also like the moment. You're feeling these things, the audience, the crowd, they're either booing you or whatever it is, trying to make you mess up, and the other team is too. And there's all these things that you have to like focus through. The military prepared me for that because when I was learning to shoot a pistol, for instance, I had to just focus on stance, grip, sight picture, trigger squeeze, all these little things that affect those little details, then the result is usually pretty good. Like it's never going to be perfect, but aim small, miss small. These are the things they taught us. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So don't rush things or don't do it too out of control. Like keep everything contained, but still be powerful, be strong, do it the best you can. That all translates every time, the same grip on that ball, the same motion when I snap it. It was just relatable. It was a relatable skill. And even though I wasn't a great football player, I became a great snapper because it was those little pieces pretty contained. And I never shot a pistol before I went to a pretty good pistol shot. Same reason. It was just like, these are things that I can kind of learn one by one. I don't have to be a great athlete. I mean, look at the guy in the Olympics who just won the silver from Turkey. These guys have all this fancy gear. The guy with the pistol shooter, and he was out there with his hand in his pocket and a pistol and a pair of glasses, and he won the silver medal because, it's not about the pure athleticism. It was just the focus, and he probably had great fundamentals, and things get great focus. So where like you don't want your name in the paper because usually it means you screwed up. If you do it perfect hundreds of times in a row, nobody cares. It's just like that's the expectation. But the one time there's a bad snap, it's everybody's talking about it. So it's one of those skills that almost anybody can kind of learn. I mean, it still takes some that I pitched growing up playing baseball, and I had a decent arm, and I played basketball, and I could, when I shoot, I put a lot of rotation on the ball, and you're doing that with football. You got to get rotation, and you're using your wrists a lot. And, anyway, but it was just finding a niche for me, because more important than anything else, I just wanted to get on the field. I just wanted to play.
That's incredible. And then you would go summers, you'd be, off, and you'd be going to training camp. You'd have to do, and you got your starting position, and then you ended up getting drafted. And it was like all these things were still stacked against you. You had all these negatives, right? Too old, too short, too slow, whatever it was that was all against you. But you didn't have any doubts. You're like, I know I'm still going to get drafted. And
doubts. Yeah, I still have doubts with everything that I do. I mean, so yeah, when I was in school, when I was at Texas, I think we mentioned, I went into the National Guard, and I ended up being deployed a couple more times. I went overseas every summer I was in school, but the last two before my junior and senior year, I went back to Afghanistan, and I practiced long snapping when I was there. Anytime I had a free moment, I mean, we're all that, but I built a target out of plywood, and I would practice and prepare as best as I could, but I always had doubts. And I think it's the same as going back to what we were talking about when I did when I pissed on the rocks and had to like make up for it with my performance. I had doubts that I was going to get selected, from then on. That doubt though was fueling me. It was making me work harder. And same with football. It was like, I always had doubts that I would, win the starting spot, or that I would have a good game, or that I was good enough, or that I would ever have a prayer in the NFL, But staying busy, working on stuff that I cared about, getting the opportunity to go back overseas and deploy and realize and remember what's truly important, having that perspective to know, like, okay, it's just okay if you don't win the starting job. It's okay. You're not going to be happy, but it's okay. It's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be fine. Life will be just fine. This is a luxury. This is so just enjoy this, work your butt off, do your best. Hopefully it works out, but like, it's okay if it doesn't. And I had that mindset through college football, and was fortunate to start for 3 years and, get in, those deployments. And it was like a lot going on. I was in my early 30s going to college and going to war and playing football. It was like a crazy time. But then, I got out of the military in the spring of 15 after I'd finished my master's degree, and football was over. College football, I thought it was over for good. But I got asked to play in the senior all-star game down in South Carolina at the Citadel, and it was called the Medal of Honor Bowl. The Medal of Honor Society hosted the game, and so I went. Of course, that was an honor to go play in that, and I was just going to be for fun. I was like, well, this will be the last one. And I'm down there, and there's a bunch of NFL scouts at practices evaluating talent. And, I'm like, well, surely they're not evaluating the 34-year-old guy that's out here. But I had 4 meetings with teams and they were like, hey, you need to put some weight on, but you should go for it. And so I said, why not? Why not? I moved out to LA, met Jay Glazer in his gym, started training, started working with a long snapper who played for the Colts at the time and doing some extra, drills and trying to learn how to block, which I didn't have to do in college. There's different rules in the NFL. Sure enough, the draft rolls around. I know I'm not going to get drafted, but I'm just like hoping a team will at least invite me to rookie mini camp or something. And I ended up having 2 undrafted free agent offers from the St. Louis Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. I had to make a decision. Like, the Rams were not good at the time. They're good now, but they were bad. Were 4-12 the year before. And the Seahawks had been to back-to-back Super Bowls. So I thought about that. I called my dad. I called my agent. I called another friend, that was a player. And what do you think I should do? Like, they're all like, well, you probably have a better shot with the Rams, but are you really going to turn down the Seahawks? Like, it's the Seahawks, man. Like, they're the team right now. And I thought about my buddy Brad Keys, who had passed away in 2012. We were teammates in the special forces, and Brad, go get it, go big kind of guy. He was one of those people that would encourage me to go to a place like Texas and not to a small college or something. Like, just go big. Like, if you don't make it, who cares? But you'll regret it if you didn't go all in. I know who you are, Nate. And so I said, guy, okay, I gotta do it. I gotta go to Seattle. So I did. And I was up there for 5 months, played for Pete Carroll. So I was very lucky to have Mac Brown in college and Pete Carroll in the pros be my coaches, national champs as well. I got through OTAs and mini camp and training camp, and then the preseason. I get to play in one preseason game, and it was amazing just to get to play, run out of the tunnel with that American flag, lead the team out. I played the whole second half. I did great. It was against the Broncos and Peyton Manning's final year, and so then on my sideline, it's John Lynch and just these legends, these NFL legends that a bunch of them will be Hall of Famers. And it was just cool to be a part of that and play in that game. And, it meant a lot, but I got cut 3 days later, and that's how it goes. Ultimately I did fail. You know what I mean? I didn't make the final roster. I didn't get to play a full year. I didn't go to a Super Bowl. All these things, people have their goals. I had those goals too. Sure. You got to look back and realize how far you came, no matter where you end up. The fact that you didn't quit, like, it wasn't my choice. I got cut. That's fine. I didn't quit. I didn't give up. I did everything I could. I did the best that I could. I went as hard as I could. I didn't always make the best decision, but I rebounded from that, and I just didn't give up. And like, that's the lesson in that. And you look back on it and you're like, I'm not even an athlete. And I playing football, I made it all the way to the NFL just because I found a way. It was like, I'm willing to do what others aren't. I'm willing to just take that crappy job or whatever, start in the mailroom. It's just you got to have that humility, the willingness to just put yourself out there, as embarrassing as it may be, and realize that at some point you're going to fail. Or knew that guy was, I knew he was a Joe. He wasn't actually good enough, Okay, great. I'm sure the people that are saying those things will never try anything in their life. And that's fine. If that's what they want to do, that's how they want to live their life, let them live their life that way. But I can't let those voices dictate my choices. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And the final question for you for the ending of the show that I ask everybody is, what can we do on a daily basis to strengthen our mindset, get mentally stronger?
Get physically stronger, push yourself physically too. I think that's a big, I think people, no matter what.
It's right here, buddy. Go show JJ your new headphones. You need to put it in a box? Okay. We were doing so good, and then my streaming just stopped.